So it was November, it was about a week before she turned 2. She developed bacterial meningitis and she got very sick with it, and she ended up in hospital for a week. And I had been in and out to the doctors, and I had been to Westdock, and they told me basically that kids get sick. You know, the doctor put his hands up at me and that's what he said. So anyway, a week later, on the Sunday night, it had gotten worse, and I rang my mother just to say, you know, that I was kind of concerned about her, because she just wasn't herself. So I ended up going out and staying with my mother that night. She told me to come and stay with her that night. So we didn't get a great sleep, but the next morning I came down to the kitchen and I had Arlene up on my shoulder, and she was just kind of lifeless and just flopped up there, and there was no life in her. That's all I can say. And my mother looked at her and she said, I think you should ring your own doctor and get a second opinion. So I did. What I did then was I went home to my apartment. I suppose, having talked to the doctor in Westdock, he put me off, and he made me feel like I was overreacting. And you just don't know when you're that age, like when you're young as well, you just don't know. And it's your first child as well, So I went home and I put her into bed, and I called the doctor. Well, we woke up, actually what I did first, we woke up at 12 o'clock or so. And what I did then was what I did every morning. I went down and I put on her favourite TV show. I put on Dora, and she would normally come running down the hall to watch this programme, and so excited, full of life, full of beans. She didn't move out of the bed. I think that was the first time where I thought, something isn't right here. It definitely was. An alarm bell went off at that point. I went down to the room, and the first thing, I walked into the room and she just vomited straight away. Her temperature was really high. She wasn't eating right. There was so many things that just, when I look back now, I realise that the signs were there. So I called my doctor at that point, and I just said she needed to be seen. So I went in with her at 3:30, and as I was sitting in the waiting room, I looked down at her, and a rash started to appear in front of my eyes, all over her body, like. So I just started to panic. I started pacing the room, and I straight away I did think meningitis was the first thing I thought, but at the same time I thought I didn't know what to do. I thought, do I start shouting now? Do I start screaming at somebody for help? Because in my mind, once you see the rash, you know, in some cases it's too late. So I had that. That's all I could think about. So when the doctor did see us, I straight away said, what's wrong with her? And she said to me, you know, sit down, calm down, I need to examine her. So I did that. Her temperature was 43 at that stage. My doctor was concerned because she knew Arlene, and she knew her from birth, and she said, later she told me that there was something wasn't right. We did go to examine her. She said she cried, but it wasn't a scream, it was more like a moan, where she was just in agony, and she was so weak that she couldn't even get the energy out, or the energy to get the cry out. She put me in the next room, and she gave her a suppository. She put me in the next room, and she said she was going to give us maybe half an hour or something to see if the temperature came down. So she came back in and examined her, and it wasn't. The temperature wasn't coming down. So she gave me a letter and she sent me into hospital, and that was we drove in traffic, 6 o'clock rush hour traffic. There was an ambulance in front of me. I remember thinking, I was talking to her the whole way in, and I kept thinking, if something happens, I'll run out and I'll bang on the ambulance or something. You know, you just don't know, like. But we got there anyway, and I was so wrecked by the time I got to casualty, and I sat down, and in the meantime I had called my mother, and her phone went dead, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm on my own, how am I going to deal with this? So anyway, I ended up in casualty, but in the meantime my mother was on her way into the hospital, thank God, because I sat down, and I wasn't sitting for 2 minutes when I turned around and she was coming through the doors. And my mother was on a mission, so she was that day. She just knew herself there was something wasn't right with Arlene. So she looked at me, she gave me the dirtiest look first of all. She went over and she banged the nurse's station, the door down, and the nurse came out and she said, "You have to wait." And my mother said, "We are not waiting, we don't have time to wait. There's a child out here vomiting, high temperature and a rash. You're going to have to see her." So they took us in, and in like seconds there was a team of doctors around her, and there was this kind of panic then. Arlene was, I just remember lying on the bed and like feeling so helpless, like looking at your child and thinking, "Oh my God, what's going on?" But they started to circle spots on her body. They circled 13, I remember, and these were the blood spots this stage that weren't fading under the tumbler test. So they told me they were going to treat her for meningitis because of this, but that they were 100% sure it was foot and mouth disease because she had the rash on her hands and feet. So they were taking a precaution and they were going to treat her for meningitis, which, okay. So they did that. And I just, at that point, I do remember that was a point where I felt like I actually turned around to my mother and I broke down, and my mother said to me, "This isn't the time to cry, you know, you have to be strong, like, for your child," like, so. So they literally just put us into isolation, and she bounced back. She was a different child, I would say, an hour after the medicine went into her, after the antibiotic went into her system. She bounced back. They put us in isolation for a week, and on the Wednesday the consultant came around and he confirmed it was bacterial meningitis. It was meningococcal septicemia. He said to me, whatever was coming was potentially very serious, and you just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So after Arlene had fully recovered, I suppose I felt very isolated, and I felt like I'd been through this life-changing experience, and I thought I wanted to tell somebody, and I wanted to sort of just reach out to somebody, or just have somebody sit down and say, you know, I understand, and I know what you went through. I read a story in the paper about Siobhan Carroll and about how she lost her daughter Ava, and it happened to be the same year that Arlene had it. So I thought to myself, I really wanted to get in contact with her for that reason, and I found just being able to sit down and talk to people about this, for someone else to understand, and the amount of people that I've met through the charity, like the amount of people that are there, and there's such a network. It's great for me. It's great to be able to just sit down with other mothers and talk about it. You make friends for life through something like this, and they have been brilliant. Like I'll do everything that I can now to work. Like I would do anything to help them out, to work with them myself. I think that they're doing brilliant work. The message that I would want to give other parents would be to know your child, know the things that they love and the things that they love to do, and they love to watch and they love to eat, and just know those things so well that when you offer that to your child and that your child refuses it and there is no life in that child, you know there's something wrong.